Hello, this is PS here. Welcome to a new episode of the Guys Connect. I'm excited for our new season. This is season 4, and we have a very, very interesting lineup for us. But I'd like to start first by introducing our guest here. My co-host is here with me, PK.
Yeah, good to be here. We're going to have a great time.
Yeah, fantastic. And we have, for the first time here on the Guys Connect, Lucky.
Hi, Lucky Abraham here. Nice to be here.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. And of course, regulars, Vikadex.
Excited to be here.
Yes, you're very much excited. And Chibox.
Yeah, it's great to be here as well.
Yes, we're excited for this new season and this very, very first episode of this season. And we'll be discussing something very, very interesting this season. And I'm sure many of us and our viewers can relate. Some of whom we've gotten some feedback from over the couple of months since the last episode from last season. And one of the interesting things we'd like to discuss today is soft life versus hard men. So somebody will be wondering what does that mean? But interestingly, I know one of the things we've discussed is that probably you might have seen is that there's a difference between the men we have now and the men we used to have probably during father's time or some couple of years before now. But the question that is comfort weakening us as men, because everybody wants the good life. Everybody wants the soft life. I do. I'm sure, most of us do. But at what point are we compromising soft life for what it takes to be, a man in this, generation, especially when, it's costing us? And at what point do we know where this compromise, that we are compromising what it takes to be a man? I would like to start by asking a very simple question. Maybe that can help us be a conversation starter. Are men now having it easier compared to men probably during our father's time or generations before us? I would like to hear a thought on that. I don't know what to go for. Speak it.
Yeah, so I think regardless of generation, there is what is intrinsically masculine. Being a man, you're expected to display some kind of strength. Yeah. In fact, even our wiring itself is supposed to be stronger, so to say. Women may not agree, but in some cases they agree when they need help. Some other time they say that what a man can do, women can do better. But really, man is hardwired to be strong because somehow you have to show up. So we only have two sexes in the universe, regardless of whatever anyone is saying, biologically speaking, without any modification, right? So when time comes when you have to show up, a man has to be strong enough to show up and show out right there in this world. Now, are things easier now for men? Not necessarily. But I think that men must continue to be strong. We are tempted to also go into the soft life temptation, right? Kind of thing right now with the way the world is. But a man must be trained to be strong and be ready. It's good to enjoy, have a good time, but be trained. Those of us who are raising boy children, I can tell that I see how to do a street training last week to ensure that what if something happens and I'm not able to come pick you from school and your mom is not able to come, what will you do? Yeah. So he gave me all the options and they were not exhaustive. So I had to tell him, you can still do this and do that. He was surprised. I said, well, at age 10, I was already in the hostel and I was a boy and I had to cook for myself. So, regardless of how the generation is evolving, a man must not be seen to abdicate what it means to be a man. Yeah. So it's good to have things better with more finances. You're able to have some more comfort, but intrinsically, you must be able to show up as a man.
Thank you very much. I think I'd like to hear Chibox.
Well, I would say we're having it easier now, sincerely. Yeah. Because if I think back to those days, even if you think back to the days of communication, where you needed to, I remember vividly having to enter public transport to visit an uncle that lived like so many kilometers away without calling him. And I got there and
he's not there.
And he wasn't in his apartment. I got to see him like months later and he told me that he was just in the next room. It was just in his neighbor's apartment, the next flat, just watching TV. And think about even the stress of not just having, a tool to communicate with.
Yeah.
So, of course, things are easier now because now it's easier to book appointments. It's easier there's different apps helping you solve problems that...
Sorry, Chibox, is it easier to be a man? Now, I think that was the...
Yeah. I think these things have aided...
Okay.
Yeah.
I agree with you that things are generally easier. But is it easier actually to be a man now than it was in those days? Even though we worked harder in those days.
Yeah.
But is it really easier to be a man now?
I still think so.
Okay.
Of course, there will always be people that will say, oh, things were difficult then. Yeah. But I feel like the tools are there to make life easier. Are we taking advantage of those tools?
Yeah. And some may also argue, I don't have a stake yet on this in terms of where I stand, but some may argue that doing parents' time is a norm that a man is the provider, for example.
Yeah.
Nobody's expecting your wife or anyone to come into, but now, we are even talking about young people going on dates and they're talking about 50-50 to even start with. And say, you have a spouse or a wife who has somewhat contribute to support you. So, I'm sure if you ask those men, then if I'm going to answer, they'll say, it's easier for us now that, but from that perspective. But there are other perspectives that, makes it a bit, because you can also flip the coin. They too will say, the men in this time will say, no, they had it easier because all I need to do as a man during my father's time is to go to work, bring money and give them the money and cross my leg on the chair and watch TV all day. Every that thing happens. But now it's not the case. In fact, you might be fanning the embers of divorce by doing that because you go like, oh, you want to turn me to your slave and all that. So there's a lot of, I'm sure either party
different angles
will want to, the ex-feminist used to. I don't mind. I'm just kidding. Victor, I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
I think it's challenging to be able to measure the quantum of difficulties.
Yeah.
I think saying hard men versus soft life is problematic in a way.
Yeah.
Just because you have a soft life does not mean you're not an hard man. It is hard men that create soft life. It is hard men that create soft life. It is men of war that create time of peace. And then the time of peace in turn create time of war that leads. That's been the sequence in history.
Yeah.
An empire goes to war to build strong systems. Then they give birth to men who've not known war, who love peace, and then there's a decline. And then you have more men of war who need to remedy the situation. However, I think in soft times, there are also hard men. What I would say is what it means to be a hard man will differ depending on the time in history you are living. So maybe you may not have the physical strength, but in soft times, you must have the discipline. You must have the boundaries. That is what will make you a hard man in that time and in that space, because that's what you will need to preserve and steward what you have in that time. So I think pitching boats against each other is problematic because it creates a nostalgia for a time where there were a lot of hard men, which may not necessarily be better. People talk about the good old days, but when you look back, the old days were not really good. There were things that...
No, but somebody will argue otherwise. And I think, I get your point. I can relate to it very well. Somebody will argue otherwise that the good old days were better. For example, one will say, for example, the good old days is easier for you as a young man. You finish your school. I hear my father-in-law and my dad of blessed memory will say, oh, you finish school. As long as you get out of school, you probably get a job and waiting for you. But now you finish out of school, the world has changed. And to get a job. So if you ask that young man who finished school after struggling writing JAM 2 or 3 times to get JAM and eventually got into school, got a degree, served, come out, and he doesn't have a job, we'll tell you that his life is harder compared to a man who finished school, got a job, and probably bought his car, a Peugeot, at maybe 400,000 naira then, and is living his life. He will say is about vice versa. The man there will tell you that you have a lot of, just like you were trying to allude to, you have a lot of tools that is making your life easier, to even do the job. But I have to physically do the work, hard work, So I'm sure if both sides want to,
I really want.
I want to hear.
I have a reaction to Victor.
Yeah, okay. I hear Lucky. Then PK, you go ahead with your reaction.
I practically align with a lot of things that have been said. And if we talk about the environment itself, in the past, things were harder based on what was available unto them. We're talking about tools that are available. It makes life much more comfortable and easier to live. But that is the expectation.
Yeah.
We now have to talk about the access. When you're talking about a man, what do you have access to? In those days, you don't go to school, you come back, there's always a job or something you can do. And it's easier for you to access a job that can bring in income to you.
Yeah.
It's easier for you to have opportunities. So despite the fact that, in quote, life was harder, they didn't have the soft things that we have, no cars, no phones, no this. It was easier for you to access, and you actually grew up in that environment. So you already know that this is what I need to do to survive.
Yeah.
So you have easier access to resources in that time. Now, life is much more comfortable, but then it's even much more difficult to access those things that are comfortably available. So are men softer or harder? I think that in this situation that we are in, men find it harder to live. We can also talk about the confusion about what is the responsibilities of a man. That someone alluded to it earlier, right? It was clearer before, be a provider and you're done. Just go get the money. And imagine if I know that all I have to do is provide for my house. If I can't get the job in the bank, I go do the mechanic work or go do the hard job. Yeah. All I know is just get the money, give it to my family and just move on and chill. I think that's a much easier life. Yeah. Because if I have the energy to do it, I just go find what my skills can do. Right now, you have the tools, you have the skills, but still even being able to achieve a source that can pay for those skills. It's much more difficult. Yeah. Now, I'm not saying that there are not people that are having it easy. Yeah. As you've always said, there are always exceptions to the rules. But I think generally, despite the fact that I think some of us here, or most of us here are privileged, I still think that generally in life, men have it harder now. Right? Are they softer? I don't think men are softer. I think that men are always trying to adapt. So for the situation, if you're using the physical or the previous generation or the previous where things were more physical, then if you're doing that comparison, the men are weaker physically. Okay. But if you're talking about intellectual grit, which is what this generation requires, are we weaker? We are still doing everything we can. So it's difficult for me to compare because I think that each of these generations change. But I will go back to what he had said. And I think there's a quote that I know that I learned much earlier in life, which says, tough times bring tough men. Yeah. Tough men bring soft times, which is what we were trying to say earlier. And soft times bring soft people, and then the circle continues, right? So they create the hard time. So the circle just keeps on going in life. So at what point are we in now? Yeah. I think that we are in the point where there was a point where things were soft and things are getting softer and somehow things are becoming tough and we need to go into that generation of war and getting ready for tough times. Okay. That's what I think.
I hold your thoughts on that because I want PK to learn because I have something that I would like to trigger us with in the question because it's really about soft men now, because we're talking about the hard life, which life is hard or no other. I want to talk about soft men, but I like PK too. I know you wanted to say something about what Ricardo said.
Yeah. So I think this topic is very versatile.
Yeah.
It's very strong.
It is.
You see, so I agree with Victor when he said hard men produces soft life. But then we have to now define what is soft life.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because what I'm finding today is that men are trying to become softer. There are a lot of men who are almost becoming feminine. Yeah. Because
that's actually where I'm going.
There's a general appeal of softness in the world. But the reality of who a man is supposed to be has not changed. So that's why children especially now had to be trained consciously to let them know that you still have to be a man. I'm not saying don't be emotional, don't be human, but we've seen where men, from your own experience, you're pursuing success, you have the drive, you want to achieve. That's for you. There are a lot of other men who are actually waiting for women who are made. And it's so strange, right? But surprisingly, there are.
Yeah.
And they just want to cash in on her, on them. So the softness of it has to be defined. Soft life has what your hard work produces is fantastic. Have life comfort is great, right? But intrinsically, as a man, emotionally speaking, where you ought to show up, are you doing that? Are you being a man?
Yeah.
So okay. And I think it's important to clarify that. Maybe I would expand it and say there are hard men and there are soft men. There are hard times and there are soft times. And in hard times, we have hard men who will survive. In hard times, we have soft men who will most likely perish. And then we have soft time. In soft time, we have hard men who will supercharge their success. And in soft time, we have soft men who will just ride the wave. And they may get away with it.
It's a soft time.
But when the hard times come back again, they will not survive.
So, and I think it's good that we add a bit of clarification on that. And because it was going to lead me to my next, not question, but like how I want us to push the conversation. Because, for example, if I see going back to soft men now, in terms of, because of soft times, and you're talking about men in this generation where we're having a lot of, we're not talking more about mental health. We're not talking more about, I can't handle this, I can't deal and all that. So, and which leads to the conversation we're talking about now. We're now having a lot of men who, because we want them to be emotional in terms of to be emotionally available, which is a good thing in itself. But in the process of that, it's almost like a trade-off. There's always something that, is got to give in the process, or subconsciously, even though it may not be your intention. So we're having a lot of men who are dealing with a lot of addiction, dealing with a lot of so-called mental health issue, and unconsciously drifting to laziness in the name of, I don't want to kill myself. I can't, So, and leads me to the quote I've shared in one of the episodes in the past is that, I was telling somebody that I know there's a lot of change. I want to be emotionally in touch, with, my people and things around me. But I genuinely want to remain a hard man. Because I'd rather be a warrior in a garden than to be a gardener in a war. Okay, so I saw a video of a lady, and I think maybe a boyfriend or a husband, I don't know, working together, and somebody accosted them, I think maybe with a knife or something, I don't know. Someday he was holding something, but I couldn't see very well. And the man ran away. And not only did he run away, he ran away without even trying to even help the lady run away. And at what point then they say this guy is a man, And so for me, it begs the question, going back to what we're talking about, everybody is solving for so-called themselves now, so men are no longer quote and unquote men as expected. So at what point do we draw the line to say, okay, men now are in the pursuit of soft life, comfort. At what point do we say that is now becoming a quote and unquote a bad compromise to what a man is originally created to be? I don't know who wants to respond to that.
I mean, PK earlier alluded something. Yeah. So he talked about the responsibilities of a man, right? And this can be a man married or unmarried at whatever point in your life. I think that those responsibilities, the basic of those responsibilities is provision, protection, right? Those are the two that I think are the core. Of course, love comes in case of relationship, and of course, generally, you always relate to people. So if you say that these are the core responsibilities of a man, it doesn't matter the times that you are in. I would expect that a man must fulfill those three basic necessities. At least the one I know. So in this case, a man ran away and left someone that they are with will happen to be a member of the opposite gender. It doesn't matter whether the person is a feminist or not a feminist. I think that a man's responsibility was to try to protect those people that were around him. Yeah. So whether a woman or a man or children, as long as there's someone there, you're a man, you take that responsibility of a man, you should protect. Now, I understand the area of mental health, and those are more softer emotional things on how you handle and how men can also be supported themselves. But in the case of what a man should do, I think we're getting softer in that area. You forget those three core responsibilities.
So I agree with that. My only layer to that is, what does that now mean for hard men in hard times versus hard men in soft times? So if the job is protection, for example, in hard times, maybe you need to be the one physically doing the protection. Yeah. Maybe in soft times, it's to get a bodyguard.
Yes.
Because I imagine that what it means for me to be a hard man coming from where I come from is different from what, say, Mr. Easy would think is an hard man in his life. The skill set to navigate my world is very different from the kind of skill set he would need. Perhaps where I'm thinking of, fortitude, being strong, being aggressive, he is thinking of bargaining and, negotiation, high-stake things.
Yes.
They are like different sides of the same coin.
Yes.
Yeah.
But what I need to navigate my maybe if I'm in Lagos, I need to be able to elbow somebody and jump into the downfall. I'm late in some place. I need to be aggressive enough to jump to the train. And maybe for him, he's looking at all of the opportunities and all of the people trying to pitch something to him to see which one is the one that makes him, what is the running train for him? What is the metaphoric downfall for him in that sense? It's also important to look at those things. But I do agree, the core of what a man should be should be well defined, but how it manifests might now be different from terrain and times.
Okay,
So things have been very dynamic as they have evolved. Like if you read this Miles Monroe's book about purpose and power of a man, you find out he did a solid job around how things evolved when we're only solely providers. Like P.S. earlier said, you underestimate the pride that encouraged men to have in those days. I think Chibok also mentioned it, that you're just a provider. The man was a king. The woman stayed at home. But it came to a time the woman felt, well, you're not the only one to be going out. I also want to start going out.
Yeah.
I also want to have a life. I have brains and I want to produce. So they started going out and they went to school and eventually they have good jobs. They do great businesses. So the things that they did alone now became shared. Then eventually we had to get a third party, another hand to actually take care of the children, take care of the home front. A number of homes I'm aware have chefs who are men. And because the wife is busy, the husband is busy.
Yeah.
So men were having a big time with that was a big problem for men, a lot, because what used to be our pride.
Yeah.
Now, this thing is very subtle. You will not realize it, that now we have this shared glory, so to say.
Yeah.
So now there's a way this dynamic has weakened men, because what they consider their strength was just provision.
Yeah.
Sense of self.
So they became weaker, so to say. And then women, with all the emancipation and all the freedom they wanted, they are becoming stronger. So, but the dichotomy, the conundrum that a man is now dealing with is how to still manage himself, to still be a leader in the midst of all this. That what I'm supposed to use in showing you that I'm the head, you now have it. So how am I going to demonstrate that I'm the head here and I'm being able to protect you and lead you? So that's balance. And at the same time, a man must also speak to other men. And thank God for Guys Connect, right? Where we are able to unburden and unload. Because the mental health issue of a man is actually dealing with this challenge and not knowing how to voice it at different levels. So constitute majority of what becomes mental health challenge for a man. It's always around who I'm supposed to be. Am I living up to it? Midlife crisis. Am I showing out enough? Am I being a man enough? Do I have enough? So those are really the things that a man thinks of. So to become a hard man appropriately in this kind of scenario is a lot of balance. It's quite nuanced. And has a dynamic.
Thank you very much. My Chibox, I know you.
I think PK is going towards the angle where I want us to really address, which is, I've come to see that, and I don't know at what point the orientation changed. Yeah. We were raised to be providers, even with women and society trying to empower women and all that. I think there's still this sense of pride that, a man should feel from picking up the bills.
Yeah. Yes.
But these days, what I see is that a lot of men, I don't know if that is the softening part we're talking about, are so comfortable with women picking up bills, are not even challenged when they see women picking up bills. There should be something in you that says, I should provide. But now, these days, men are easily able to cross their legs and have a woman just pay the bills. And I'm wondering, at what point did our orientation change? Because I'm from a generation where even if the woman was well-to-do, as a man, you knew to an extent it was your duty to provide. If it was a 2-bedroom flat you were able to afford, for instance, and this girl, maybe Nepo baby, lived in a mansion or something, and you guys are married, these days, a man will even start. I know of a case where the man started telling the girl, please tell your dad to provide a bigger house for us. Can you imagine that kind of mindset?
Yeah.
When you should actually say, you know what? I'm not on the same level as your dad. We're starting from a 2-bedroom apartment and we should be content with that.
Yeah.
Do you understand?
Yeah.
And these are discussions you should have even had before going into anything serious. So the woman knows that you're a man of principle. You are going to provide within your means. But we are raising men these days, or I don't know, maybe it's the orientation that is changing.
It's a social issue.
Okay, let me ask. Let me tweak this a bit. Do we think hardship is necessary?
Absolutely.
For a man in building a man. What are your thoughts on that?
To me, whether he likes it or not, it comes. It comes.
Yeah. So because I feel like using the example Chibos just used, and it's not just example that is something that is prevalent. And the question would be, I can understand in a situation where it's a case of situation happened. You know, you guys were doing well, something happened. But when it's now something like a default, even like PK said, it's almost like something you're even targeting. I see in some places where it's almost as if the men just want to, like, okay, since people want equality, I can't keep myself. Let me just
I think it boils down to what PK says about it being a social issue. I think that for the first time, where we're challenging, so men, I feel like providing is their sole right, their sole responsibility, their sense of self. And the moment you challenge what a man sees as a sense of self, and he doesn't have an answer, he looks at different ways to find an answer. And the solution that Piki had mentioned was the balance. On one hand is, yes, you must have the decency and the aggression enough to still want to provide. At the other end is you must not be too arrogant that you cannot seek for help when you need it. Now, the difficulty is, when do you know when to switch? So should I ask for help because I'm broke in 2 months? Or should I wait until they're about to chase me out of the house before I seek for help? Or should I just be open to the idea of having help right from the bat? And different people are choosing different answers. And because as a society, we've not been able, again, we have not been able to figure out where all of this pathway ends, because we're like the first generations dealing with this. Maybe in the next several decades, we will see how the different choices leads to different outcomes, and then be able to select the path we want based on the outcome that we desire. So it's a question that we're all facing, and nobody really knows the right answer.
Okay, because of our time, I know this conversation, I would have loved us to go deep into it, but we're running out of time. And I think that gives me an idea of what the next episode should be. I think we should be talking about what defines men in this current time, because I think the challenge is that a lot of men have lost what they think makes them a man. And so once that is taken away, like you said, it's almost as if you don't have any answer. And so you almost like reacting rather than, being proactive. What are the other things, I can do that makes me a man in the relationship? I would like to take a final word from every one of us, and then we'll call it a day on this episode. And I think what are your thoughts generally on our times, soft men, as we said, and but generally I don't want to go from that, but I want to go from the point of view that what are your thoughts generally on, as we sign off, what a man should do with our times and should do in times like this? You want to go first, Dr. Lucky?
Times like this, meaning these times are soft.
Yeah. Well, I'm not saying that, but if you say so.
I think from what you already said earlier, I will just work with that, which is that you cannot be a warrior. It's better to be a warrior in the garden than a gardener in a war, right? So a man must be prepared at all times, irrespective of whether they are hard times or soft times. However, a man must also know how to seek help, because help is always available.
I like that. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Okay. I think a man should understand how important community is.
Yeah.
It is important if I have someone like a PK, a PS, I should not suffer in silence.
Yeah.
I should have people that I look up to mentor me, people I can go to be vulnerable with. Yeah. I think in hard times, everybody should find that community. Yeah. People you can lean on, people that you can draw wisdom from.
Yeah.
And in soft times, be that person to other people.
Yeah.
Basically.
I like that. And they actually also help you make sense of that hard time.
Exactly.
Very much.
Yeah.
Look at X.
3 things. Better to have it, the toughness, and not need it, than to need it and not have it. Number 2, tough times never last, but tough people do.
Mm-hmm.
And lastly, the more you sweat in peace, the less you bleed in war.
Like that. PK?
Train to be tough. You don't know when you will need it. Basically.
Yes. Yeah, I like that.
All of us are just saying about the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I think I'll leave us with this. I think for me, at times is probably the best times you can learn. Because sometimes the challenge we have is that we don't want the hard times to come. I'm not saying you should invite the hard times. I'm saying when it comes, rather than shy away from it, is how you can, what can you make of it? Like I said, I've said this oftentimes. I said, I'd rather learn from the man who tried and failed and than to learn from the man who never tried. So you failed, so I can learn from you. Why did you fail so that I don't make those mistakes? Or myself, I failed in this. Why did I fail? What could I have done better? Rather than sit down, sulk, and because a lot of men, especially married ones, when they are in hard times, they don't know how to react. So in their spouse, their better half, or even their children in some case, they begin to get the brunt of that, because they don't know how to. But if you have a community, like you said, you can unbond. I can say, okay, especially when you know that this what is happening to you is that's happening to a lot of men like you, and they're able to solve it, and they're able to draw strength from that, and they're able to become better out of it. I think on this note, we're going to call it a day. And please, I'd love to enjoy every one of you to please like, subscribe, and share this content. We'd like to hear from you. You can drop a comment from us at the Guys Connect on YouTube and on Instagram. Thank you very much, guys, for coming. PK, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to have you. Lucky,
You guys.
Vikadex,
See you around.
Chibox.
Thanks so much.
And until next time, this is PS here. See you next time. Yes, yeah. There are conversations that men like to laugh and banter about. And then there are conversations that challenge the way of thinking. Those hard conversations that challenge your thinking, your thought process, and the man you are becoming. This season, those are the conversations we'll be having, ranging from brotherhood, relationship, spirituality, discipline, courage, sex, and many more. Join me, your host and your co-host PK, as we're tackling this topic. New faces, the regulars will be joining us as we talk about conversations that truly matter. Welcome to the Guys Connect podcast, season 4.